Hello, everyone. My name is Ezra, otherwise known as E-Soup. Today, we're at the halfway point of this final volume of Ballad of Sword and Wine. By the way, can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay, yes, it's working. It was thinking for a moment. Cool. Hi, Lanjade. Hi, Blue. Hi, Nisi. So yeah, we're at the halfway point, and we're so close to wrapping things up because there's only 4 more streams of this book, uh, like of this entire story, and including today's. And I still kind of can't believe that. Um, a lot of interesting developments happened last time. So today we're reading chapters 277 to 280. And this will be, I think, 55 pages, so a little bit on the longer side. Also, Blue, thank you so much for all the quotes that you've been putting in Discord. I need to go edit the slideshow thing again. I meant to do that today before the stream, and then I totally lost track of time. But for next week, it will be updated. I wish it's always hard deciding what to put in because there's no way I can fit everything, and I want to. Unless it went by so fast that you wouldn't even be able to read it. Trying to remember, where did we leave off last time? That's right, we left off at a little bit of a cliffhanger, and I am concerned about Yao and Yu. Because it kind of feels like Yao and Yu is making, like, his last stand of sorts is what it feels like to me, but I would not like to manifest that. Yeah, Blue, you said, oh god, that's right. And Nisi, you're absolutely correct, the ADHD strikes again. Yeah, so we're in the middle of Yao Wenyu, like, making his pitch to, the Chudu people and the students. And, yeah, Kentang Jiuqing just say psych. So, and it doesn't help that the chapter we're starting with today is called Clash. But with that, I'm gonna get started, and we hopefully find out that something good happens. We're on page 205 for chapter 277, Clash. When Shui Yanqing escorted the heir apparent to the palace, he produced an endorsement from the late emperor, as well as Prince Qin's personal seal, which he showed to the Grand Secretariat. Yao Wenyu brushed a finger lightly over his pale lips. But these two objects have no bearing on each other. Prince Qin's personal seal was not stamped on the endorsement itself. If these objects alone can prove that Li Jianting is Prince Qin's daughter of lawful birth, then the calligraphy of ancient imperial family members in the study of my Yao manor are all proof of sovereignty. Even as a chill spread through his limbs, Chen Yu knew he couldn't show any sign of weakness. All eyes were on this confrontation outside the city today. One wrong answer could doom Chudu forever. He composed himself before saying, "When Her Majesty entered the palace, the Grand Secretariat carried out a public verification right there in the Great Hall. The Empress Dowager also confirmed that Her Majesty was of the Li clan's bloodline." The heavy rain pelted down on the oil paper umbrella, the noise like a handful of scattered beads. After the late emperor passed, the Li clan's bloodline fell into decline, said Yao Wenyu. The so-called public examination you speak of was based solely on the words of Shui Yanqing. The Empress Dowager lived alone deep in the palace, with eunuchs controlling her on the inside, and sycophantic ministers coercing her on the outside. How can her word be believed? The question was a punch to Chen Yu's gut. He stumbled back and sputtered, "Sycophantic. How can you say I'm a sycophantic minister?" On the day of the public examination, the whole court of civil and military officials was present. If anyone dared to coerce the Empress, I'd have been the first to see his head roll. Very well. You are loyal. I admire you for it. Yao Wenyu pulled a letter from his sleeve pocket. I happen to have here a confidential letter from the Third Lady, recounting in detail the incident in which Han Chung coerced the Empress Dowager, using Di Cheng's faulty accounts, along with a personal letter between the Empress Dowager and the Third Lady referencing the same. It is stamped with the Empress Dowager's personal seal. The moment he held it aloft, the uproar on the platform drowned out even the sound of the rain. Sen Yu had never expected Yao Wenyu to have genuine proof. The chill that had prickled up his spine earlier became a numbing cold. It was not Zhongbo in peril today, but Chudu. Bracing himself against the edge of the nearest table, he said, "The Third Lady has been away from Chudu for a long time. She was not waiting upon the Empress Dowager then. Her words." "The Third Lady is the rightful mistress of Qidong," Yao Wenyu retorted, relentless. "If her words hold no weight, then why have Qidong's 300,000 soldiers not moved?" Damn. Muffled thunder sounded overhead. Yao Wenyu released his grip and let the letter fall into a puddle. The Qi clan would risk their prestigious reputation of 100 years rather than send troops to aid the throne, because the one sitting on it today is not a sovereign of the Li clan at all. Xue Yanqing deliberately obfuscated the truth, calling a horse a deer. I do wonder why he let the letter fall into a puddle. Like, maybe you want to keep that as physical proof later on, but he's like, I'm making such a solid point that it doesn't even matter, I guess. Also, hi, Henry. He deceived everyone in the imperial court and tried to pass off a brothel girl as an imperial heir. A brothel girl? You delude the people with rumors and lies. A student leveled a finger at Yao Wenyu and snapped. Her Majesty is the daughter of a farmer outside Chudu. She has long had a benevolent reputation among her neighbors. How gullible. There was no warmth in Yao Wenyu's eyes. Li Jianting has never once summoned her supposed adoptive parents since ascending the throne. If she is as benevolent and filial as you claim, would she be so indifferent to the parents who raised her? At these words, even the students on the platform staggered back and collapsed. Sen Yu had no chance of keeping his feet. The capital troops of Chudu whispered among themselves in horror. Dark clouds were pressing in toward the palace halls of Chudu. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The sky seemed to have split open, illuminating the upturned eaves with a glint like knives. The letter Yao Wenyu had produced had been swiftly copied and passed throughout the cities of the southwest. Okay, we still have physical proof. The embroidered uniformed guard still hiding in Chudu roved the streets and alleys. Ge Qingqing sat at a table in a tea house, watching the raindrops pelt the window paper. Li Jianting raised her head at the rumble of thunder. She could almost hear the pounding of the battle drums. She asked the nearly empty Mingli Hall, "Has the Prince of Donglia deployed her troops?" Feng Chuan lit a stick of incense and replied, "Soon." The soft rustle of cloth came from behind the screen. Jiran sat straight-backed at the side of the small table, taking Liu Nyang's pulse through a handkerchief for the sake of propriety. Wow, that for the sake of propriety. So he can't, like, touch her bare skin to take her pulse. The Qi clan has always raised loyal and chivalrous subjects. Jiang Qingshan said. The old marshal has an illustrious career of military achievements, and has always been favored by the throne. But the empire is now in imminent danger, torn asunder by internal strife. It's time for the Qi clan to restore its position as the stalwart blade of the state. I'd advise you, Marshal, not to corrupt your family's righteous cause over matters of personal friendship. Revere your sovereign, and you will be lauded by all. The future glory of the Qi clan is right before your eyes. You are a formidable minister who has governed Jueshi most capably. You are more familiar with civil administration than me. Qi Juyin sipped her tea. Since, as you say, it is a time of crisis for the Empire, let's skip over these tired cliches. Steam wrapped its way around the tea pavilion. Jiang Qingshan laughed wryly. To exhort a soldier to honor and glory is indeed nothing but platitudes. You are right. I came here instead to share a few heartfelt words with you. He set down the teacup and looked at Qi Juyin. Marshal Qi, if the current emperor were incompetent, I would not have come. But now, the revitalization of our great Zhou is within reach. We need only eliminate the remaining internal threats, and the people will flourish in prosperity. He paused for a moment. The Xiande emperor didn't involve himself in court politics when he was on the throne. He turned a blind eye to the factions tussling for power in the court. The year Jueshi was hit with a drought, I didn't have sufficient grain to distribute relief. I was at my wit's end, and could only beg and borrow in haste, incurring a towering debt. It was Yan Qing who rushed to Chudu overnight to implore the Grand Secretariat to help me. When Hua Siqian wanted to have me killed, it was also Yan Qing who knelt before the Secretariat elder's door and pled with him to save my life. All these years, he ran all over the empire in his position as the chief supervising secretary of the Office of Scrutiny for Revenue. We drink to that one. And fought for the careers of capable local officials, going to great lengths to build up what they call the pragmatist faction today. His efforts have allowed our great Zhou to continue to struggle on after the reign of Tianchen. Marshal, we dare not claim all the credit for ourselves, but in order to fight for a new dawn for this empire, we would gladly stake our lives and those of our families. Jiang Wanxiao was telling the truth. The corrupt administration of the latter years of Yongyi was firmly rooted in Chudu, but the regions outside the capital had still done all they could to hold on. Jueshi's current ability to bear the burdens of the Zhou Empire was not something that had been achieved overnight. It was a cornerstone that men like Jiang Qingshan had laid down over the past decade and more, at great cost. Since the first year of Xiande, Yan Qing has taken every opportunity to exhort the imperial court to send capable officials to Zhongbo to clean up the mess there. But in consideration of Hua Siqian's power at the time, the Secretariat Elder didn't dare act rashly, afraid it would endanger more officials of common backgrounds in the central administration. It was only when Hua Siqian fell from grace in the 8th year of Xiande that the Grand Secretariat finally agreed to transfer me to Zhongbo as Provincial Administration Commissioner, but by then it was too late. Not only were bandits running rampant in the 6 prefectures, the influence of the noble clans was too deeply rooted in Chudu. Frustration seemed to overwhelm him. He couldn't help but bang his fist against the table, despondent. Venting a long sigh, he continued. We had no troops and no power, so what were we to do? The Grand Secretariat spent half a year deliberating over my order of transfer alone, The light fragrance of tea rose into the air. He took a moment to compose himself before continuing. I had already given up. It was Yan Qing who helped Her Majesty onto the throne and, with her help, relentlessly pursued the Dancheng field taxes. Marshal, if Her Majesty were merely another useless royal descendant like the late Emperor, then I would say let Shen Zichuan revolt as he wishes. But there is now light at the end of the tunnel. He fixed his gaze on Shi Juyin and said urgently, when you requested to send troops to fight the Qingshu tribe at the start of the first year of Sheng Yin, a move that would assist Li Bei, we agreed because of the foreign threat, and we provided military salaries and provisions. It is no longer as it was during the reign of Xiande, when the nation's generals had to beg for money in the capital. The case of moldy grain in Bianjun Commandery prompted Lu Guangbai to desert, yet the Grand Secretariat never did heed the imperial censor's exhortations to strip the Lu clan of their noble title and rank. They wanted to give the court and Lu Guangbai a chance for everyone to start over. There will be no interference from the noble clans this time, only sincere cooperation between civil and military officials. The revitalization of our great Zhou is at hand. But is that true, though? As you're saying, Blue, is there, though? Is there really? Every one of Jiang Wanxiao's words came from his heart. These were things others could not fathom or comprehend, or were not even willing to listen to. Officials like him were cogs in the machine that was the Zhou Empire. When spots of rust began to corrode the court, the nation relied on generation after generation of virtuous, talented men to keep it oiled and running. This responsibility did not fall on one person. In the early years, perhaps it was Qi Huilian. Later, it was Hai Liangyi. Now, it was Xue Xiuzhuo. These men differed fundamentally from the voices of the noble clans. Even if their ideologies were in conflict, or their philosophies contradictory, they did the practical work on behalf of the people. They were the last glimmer of hope for the survival of this old, decaying tree. Shen Zichuan introduced the Yellow Registry in the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo, but we have long since implemented such household registration in Jueshi. Ever since I took up oversight of the 13 cities, the yemen throughout the region have been verifying these records every year. On my watch, no land has been lost, no fields have gone to waste, and trade at the port has thrived. If Shen Zichuan hadn't insisted on interfering, the port of Yongyi would not have closed this year. He took a breath. The investigation into the 8 cities' field taxes was suspended only because Shen Zichuan was at our door. He proclaimed himself the prefectural governor of Zhongbo, and the regions of the east called him overlord. The noble clans were driven to extremes to save their hides. There was no choice but to stop the... Behind the screen, Liu Niang exclaimed softly. Jiang Qingshan came to an abrupt halt and rose slightly from his seat. Hong Ying stepped out from behind the screen and whispered in Hua Xiangyi's ear. Hua Xiangyi looked up at Jiang Qingshan. Your wife is greatly weakened after your arduous journey, and the child is at risk. She may need to stay here for a few days to recuperate in peace. Liu Niang had been in ill health since the reign of Xiande. Jiang Qingshan didn't doubt that what Hua Xiangyi said was true. That's an interesting line, because do we doubt it to be true? Is it true, or is she throwing in some kind of diversionary tactic? Also, hi, Vase. Even as he poured his heart into his fervent persuasion, he was worried sick about Liu Niang. For a moment, he lost his voice. He could neither bring himself to go to her, nor sit back down and continue. Anitaba, the mistress needs to take some medicine, Jiran said softly. What kind of medicine? Jiang Qingshan couldn't help but ask. She has a frail constitution. All the physicians she usually sees have been cautious with their prescriptions. I heard you have been married for several years, yet your mother still demands your wife attend her every day. Never mind before, Hua Xiangyi said, reproach creeping into her voice. But why is she required to do so now that she's with child? How can you ask this of her? These domestic affairs were a sore spot for Jiang Wanxiao. His mother had been widowed as a young woman, yet against all the odds, she had raised him to be a major official ruling a border region. The old matriarch couldn't be bribed with gold or precious treasures, nor did she form any social connections with the female kin of other court officials. She wholeheartedly wished for Jiang Qingshan to remain an uncorrupted official, but she was too strict in her management of the household, and especially harsh on Liu Yang. Qi Juyin hadn't planned to speak on this point. She had a multitude of domestic troubles herself that vexed her to no end. But then she felt a gentle nudge on her foot under the table. She sipped her tea, considering Hua Xiangyi's silent message. When she set down her cup, she said, "Let's put aside these government affairs for now. Since there's still no news from Chudu, better get the mistress settled first." Skeptical, Jiang Qingshan said cautiously, "About the deployment." "I'll think on it," Qi Juyin said. "You'll have your answer in 2 days." Oh my god, Blue, you said, did the mother-in-law do something to make the wife lose her pregnancies? Right, because has she had multiple miscarriages before? I remember something about that. I just forgot that that was her. He said, why is this a telenovela all of a sudden? I mean, there's certainly been, well, wait, has there been precedent of people messing with pregnancies in this book, or am I just mixing it up with another one? Regardless, that doesn't really surprise me. The political drama in all of this, if there is someone messing with pregnancies, okay, yeah. Yeah. Now I'm wondering about that. Fei Shi covered his head as he ran through the rain. He could hear the whispers all around him. Traitor, emperor, pretender. Chudu, with its centuries of history, teetered on the precipice in this rainstorm. He ran until his shoes were soaked. Someone knocked into him, sending him staggering. Oh, yes, okay, there was the concubine who was drowned in a well. The well-heeled young Marquis of the past was now simply dressed. After the Hulian Marquis had taken to his bed, Fei Shi's disreputable friends no longer deigned to associate with him. The family's money had all gone to make up the field taxes. They couldn't afford the upkeep of their servants within the manor, and had no choice but to dismiss them. Fei Shi had thought to continue his idle ways, but when he saw his elder sister Zhao Yue caring for her child, even after late nights spent on embroidery work for others, he realized his family was thoroughly broke. These days, he eked out a living writing letters for others. Fei Shi cursed as he picked up some letters he had dropped. Damn dog, must be blind to bump into me. He wiped the rain off his face. Don't you know I used to? The man who'd bumped into him had fallen to the ground. Finding him strangely familiar, Fei Shi kicked him. Hey! Who? The man jerked his head up, but he was so dirty his face was indistinguishable. He clapped his hands at Fei Shi and giggled. Young Marquis, young Marquis. Fei Shi pocketed the papers. So you can see well enough now. That's me, all right. The lunatic was covered in filth and had only one shoe. Shaking his head slowly, he said, "Young Marquis, looking for my elder brother." "I'm not your elder fucking brother." I don't think that's what he said, you were. Feisha yanked his hem away from the man's grasping hand. Covering his nose at the man's stench, he flapped a hand to drive him off. "Shoo, shoo." This lunatic bared his teeth in a grin and left, jumping around in the rainstorm and yelling at everyone he came across. "Elder brother. My elder brother is a major official. A major official with a sword." What rotten luck. Feisha muttered, turning away. Yet he still found that voice familiar. He had only taken a few steps down the street when he spotted the run-down Han Manor through the curtain of rain and froze. The capital troops are passing through, out of the way. Military boots sent water flying as the soldiers splashed through puddles on their run across the streets of Chidu. The entire city was on high alert, and the defensive weapons in the armory had all been moved to the top of the city wall. News that Shen Zichuan was about to attack the city had spread even wider than rumors about the Girl Emperor's origins. The soldiers shoved Feisha aside. His face was still blank with shock as he turned his head, as stiff as a wooden statue. Han Jin. Do we remember who Han Jin is? I mean, it's the person that he just saw, but the Han family. I'm struggling to remember anything about them right now. Because that name sounds familiar, but like, when has that come up? The one who survived the massacre of the Han family? The night Han Chung was killed, Han Jin was like the survivor. That would make sense. That's right, Han Chung. Okay, that's the Han family. I know Han Chung. I just can't remember all those details. Yao Wenyu retreated unscathed from his verbal sparring with the Chudu scholars. He turned his donkey around, the slight angle of his oil paper umbrella allowing the rain to wet one side of the hem of his green robe. Still in shock, Chen Yu braced himself against the edge of the table and raised a hand as if to call out to Yuanjua again. A soldier behind him soundlessly hoisted a bow. Oh, don't do this. He gripped an arrow between his fingers and drew the bowstring all the way back. Amid the bamboo, raindrops fell like strings of beads off the rim of the oil paper umbrella. Yao Wenyu's breathing was slightly ragged. The handkerchief he clutched in his hand had long since been soaked red. Humiliated from the defeat, a student chased after him. Shen Zichuan wants to claim the empire, so he can honor Shen Wei's name on the imperial altar. It is an act neither virtuous nor righteous. Even if I die, I will never kneel to him. Everyone's saying this like Shen Zichuan wouldn't, change his name if he could. Also, no, I don't like what's happening right now. I read that Yao and Yu retreated unscathed. And I was like, okay, we're good now. Like, are we not good now? The downpour drowned out the sound of Yao Wenyu's coughing. When he looked back, however, the corners of his tightly pursed lips lifted slightly. The umbrella slid to the ground. His hair was instantly soaked, but he had steel in his voice as he said, "We rose out of Zhongbo, and have only ever spoken of Shen Wei's defeat as a disgrace. His lordship brought peace and stability to the land for the sake of all people. He will neither take a wife nor beget a son. What's more, he seeks to redress the injustices done in the reign of Yongyi, and clear the names of the loyal officials lost in the fall of the Eastern Palace. You don't need to kneel. When the country is stable, the commoners' livelihoods have been restored, and the granaries everywhere are full to bursting. His lordship. The twang of the bowstring sent up a spray of raindrops as the arrow leapt from the bow. In the blink of an eye, the sharp glint was before Yao Wenyu. A swift sword thrust down from the stalks of green bamboo, and amid the metallic clang, as sword and arrow collided, Qiao Tianya landed on the ground. Henry, don't say that. No, don't say that, Henry. No, he blocked the arrow with his sword. Okay, okay. I'm trying to... I need them both to be okay. Shen Zichuan stood high up on the watchtower, gazing out toward Chudu. The wind swept his cloak up, sending it fluttering. Bits of ice and snow mixed with that torrential rain. One does not execute the messenger when two armies are in discussion, the prefectural governor said. Does Chudu think there is no one left in Zhongbo to stand up to them? Qiao Tianya slowly straightened and stood in front of Yao Wenyu, his eyes hidden behind locks of drenched hair. He nudged his sheath open with his thumb and barked, "Draw your blades." Rainwater slid down the Imperial Army's armor. The glint of steel flashed throughout the bamboo forest. In Mingli Hall, the incense had burned out. Okay, well, that sounded like it was a successful intervention. And yeah, as you said, Henry, okay, sorry, that was really hot. I really thought something was going to happen to one or both of them. Well, the incense is burning out in Mingli Hall, which is in Chudu, right? I think the incense burning out is about Chudu being on its last legs. Or wait, where's Mingli Hall? That was Chudu, right? I'm pretty sure this is like the reckoning for Chudu has come. It's over for them. But I'm still worried about certain people. I don't know. Well, I was gonna speculate on something, and then I was like, I don't want to, like, manifest anything happening to anybody, so I'm just not gonna say it. We're on page 217 for chapter 278, which is called Overlord. Well, Blue, what I was going to say is, like... can't be worse than what Henry does. That's fair. Okay. No, just, like, manifesting possible things to happen, but they didn't happen, so it's okay. I was saying, at this point, I don't know... Like, Yao Wenyu could just die because of his illness. Or he could die in battle. And I was like, I don't know what's worse. Yeah, I just... And then if something happens to Qiao Tianya too, that would just be like... I don't... I feel like he's not the vulnerable one in this situation, but it would just be a double whammy if something happens to him too, because it will probably be in addition, so I'm just like, no. Yeah, a miracle cure, that's what we need. Okay, chapter 278, Overlord. Sen Yu's stomach dropped the moment he glimpsed the arrow flying. When he saw the Imperial Army drawing their blades, he was so anxious he coughed blood. Covering his mouth, he demanded, "Who shot that arrow?" He had told Luo Mu to give strict orders to his soldiers not to make any move. Whether or not Yao Wenyu died, this one arrow had doomed Chudu. Yeah, I wonder who did shoot the arrow. Like, was it just like an unnamed soldier, or are we gonna find out something? In the bamboo grove, Tantai Hu charged forward with his blade in hand, his voice booming. "Your promises are worthless. To hell with your talks." The Imperial Army surged forward through the rain. sending up sprays of muddy water as they fell into formation. They held their blades before them, the front ranks slashing their way into Luomu's ragtag army, which had come forward to meet them. Flashing blades and glinting swords obscured the falling rain. Tables and chairs on the platform overturned with a series of crashes as the students rushed to help Senyu up and then retreated in a panic. "Stop!" Senyu, still clinging to hope, wiped blood from his mouth and cried, "Your lordship, please hear me out." But the Imperial Army had already charged across the invisible boundary line. No one listened to Senyu. The rain washed over him, soaking his official's robe until it clung to his body. Under the assault of icy rain pelting his face, he broke down and, sobbing, called toward the walls of Chudu. "I have failed Her Majesty." The bronze bell in the watchtower in Chudu tolled with a crash like thunder, but Li Jianting knew it was not. Supporting herself against a pillar at the entrance of the hall, she slowly stepped into the rain. The flower embellishment on her forehead dissolved in the water. Oh, that's some symbolism. She looked at Xue Xiuzhuo, standing at the foot of the steps, as if seeing him for the first time. "You have thousands of taels of silver and the support of the people," Li Jianting said, raising her arm to point south. "If you flee to Jueshi now and find a new emperor, you can keep fighting Shen Sichuan." Xue Xiuzhuo looked back at her. After a long while, he lifted his hands and removed his black official's hat. "I am a minister of the Li clan's court." Li Jianting smiled, then laughed. Her laughter grew louder until her whole face was wet with rainwater. She strode toward him, revealing a hint of her long-lost innocence as she asked, "Teacher, have I completed my education?" All her life, she had been stuck peeking through a crack in the door. It was only after clawing until the nails of her fingers rotted off that she finally became a vessel for something more. She rose out of the muck, only to bear the weight of a falling sky. Ooh, that's a good line. She was inquisitive, diligent, a prodigy, yet she was powerless to turn the tide. Xue Xiuzhuo looked down at the hat in his hands. "You could have achieved more. It was only because your teacher was not up to the task that we have failed here. I am the blade that went off course." He had known from a young age that his was not a natural talent. He could not easily remember essays on contemporary politics, so he stayed up all night and memorized them by rote, making use of every second. Even a break for a mouthful of water was a waste. At the age when he was at his most impulsive, the Guangcheng Emperor had dealt a blow to his morale and dulled his edge. It was then that he came to understand that the seemingly prosperous Zhou Empire was in truth a wasteland. It would never have occurred to him to take his path had he not witnessed Qi Huilian's ephemeral brilliance. Interesting how many people Qi Huilian has influenced on kind of all sides. That flash of light ignited his hope. He had followed in Qi Huilian's footsteps, stubbornly believing the Empire could still be saved. But reality always disappointed him. He respected Hai Liangyi. Yet in the end, he had chosen a much different path than the man he had revered as a teacher. Blue, I did see you say that. Why do I feel like Xue Xiuzhuo is going to take out Li Jianting himself? That did not occur to me. If that happens, I will be surprised, but I don't know, maybe you're onto something. I'm very... The whole thing with Li Jianting right now, I don't really want her to die. And I'm trying to think of, like, what kind of things could happen in this situation, and there's just too much to compute. All of them had wanted to save the Zhou Empire, but none of them succeeded. Wait, did I read all of that? Yeah. Yeah, he respected Hai Liang-yi, yet in the end he had chosen a much different path than the man he had revered as a teacher. All of them had wanted to save the Zhou Empire, but none of them succeeded. You raised me to this position, but no one here is willing to act with reason. The Empress Dowager used Han Cheng, who in turn used Fu Man. They all want to kill me. Li Jianting raised a hand and scrubbed at the flower embellishment between her brows until it was nothing but a smear of red. Is the Emperor not permitted to fight back? If I don't kill them, I'll die. She turned away from him. We both tread carefully inside this cage, holding our breath. Even if we have grand ambitions, we have no power to realize them. We are out of time. Li Jianting had fair skin, a facade cultivated during her time sheltered in the Shui Manor. But beneath her many layers of clothes, she was covered in scars. When she stood on the steps of the palace, she was Li Jianting. No one cared about Ling Ting's whereabouts. No one thought Ling Ting deserved to live. All men have ways to kill outside the law. The sturdy bodies of men crushed my bones, and passers-by found me filthy as I lay discarded on the ground. She looked back at Shui Shoujuo. No one thought to hold them accountable, as though I was the one who lay down willingly. Die once, and I deserved to be discarded like an old shoe, unfit to stand before anyone again. See, this is why I don't want her to die. I'm like, what can happen in this situation where we can, like, our protagonists can get what they want, and, like, somehow Li Jianting can, like, get by and be okay? Because I'm still a little bit unclear, like, does she like being emperor? Like, I know she wanted to get rid of Shui Shoujuo and not have anyone controlling her and putting her in a cage, in a box. But does she like being emperor? Like, I don't know. I said, Blue, you said I'm kind of marking this whole chapter as a huge quote. No, I won't. I'll just break it up into multiple quotes. It'll be great. Thank you. The tolls of the bell grew more urgent until the sounds blended together into one long chime. Rainwater flooded past the hems of their robes. The sky was so dark that the lofty, overlapping roofs of the palace could no longer be seen. Was that my fault? Li Jianting sneered. I heeded the teachings of the books, teacher. I didn't even kill those pigs. The day you took me away from Xiangyun Villa, I thought I would seek revenge, but you taught me benevolence, justice, morality, virtue. I learned endurance as I lived in this rotten palace, never faltering for a moment over all these years. I chased after everyone, trying to catch up, but in the end, we are still left with nothing. Her chest heaved. It was too unfair. There was too much she could not accept. Finally, she could endure no more. She pointed to her eyes and said, I don't rely on these inherited eyes to live. I am not like anyone else. I am Li Jianting. She yanked out her golden hairpin and flung it into the rain, spitting contemptuously. To hell with virtue and deference. I am an emperor. I am the last emperor of the Li clan. I'm getting mixed signals here, because she threw off her hairpin. You know, is it like symbolic? And they're like destroying all these symbols of her being emperor, but she's like, I am the emperor. But then she's saying, I am the last emperor of the Li clan. So she's kind of saying, like, this is it. It ends with me. Yeah, Henry, you said, I love Suzhou, but she should get to kill everyone. Thunder exploded over the vault of heaven, and a streak of lightning cut through the rain and lit everyone's faces deathly white. Li Jianting shook off her wet cloak and shed all of her cumbersome hair pieces. Okay, I see now, yeah, and you said as herself, not as Li Jianting. Kind of like, I'm the emperor, but I'm getting rid of all of this crap that I don't actually like. Her voice was frosty as she proclaimed, I live and die with the Zhou Empire. Well, I guess she's not getting her happy ending. Because I don't think the Zhou Empire is going to live, so... I'm so conflicted about this. But I don't think it's something that we're supposed to be happy about. Like, I appreciate that the story is written in such a way that, like, for the people that we're rooting for to fully have success in what they're trying to do, people that we like have to die, and you just kind of have to, like, accept that because that's realistic in real life political situations, that, like, no one is even able to go about this in a fully, like, noble way. Chudu had 8 city gates, all of which were now sealed off. The crossbows at the top of the wall clicked as the gears turned. The armory of the 8 great battalions had been emptied out in anticipation of this moment, and the battlements were densely packed with bows and arrows. The Zhongbo garrison troops concentrated their attack on the main east gate. With Mistress Hua holding him in Qidong, Jiang Wanxiao won't be able to return. Yao Wenyu gasped for breath as he propped himself up on the edge of the bed and said to Shen Zichuan, the path ahead has been opened. I will wait here for your lordship's triumphant return. Shen Zichuan removed Avalanche from his belt and set it beside Yao Wenyu's hand. I am entrusting this blade to you. Give it back to me when I return. I don't know if I like that. Yao Wenyu smiled sadly. Why put me in such a spot? Shun Ar is still in Sezhou. Shen Zichuan's eyes dimmed slightly. You are still his teacher. Yao Wenyu could only say, I'll do my best. Fei Sheng removed the cloak from Shen Zichuan's shoulders. Shen Zichuan stepped back and held Yao Wenyu's gaze for a moment, then turned to exit the tent without another word. Tidying up the tent on his way out, Fei Sheng found Yao Wenyu's handkerchief, soaked through with blood. The wind cut through the dense flurry of snow outside. As Shen Zichuan strode down the steps, the men of the Imperial Army flanking his path stared straight ahead. He secured his arm guard without breaking his stride, and when he brushed past Tantai Hu, he heard him bellow with his head held high. After we take Chudu tonight, the fate of the Empire will be sealed. His lordship always leads the charge. We shall repay it in kind, sincerity and loyalty. The Imperial Army and Zhongbo garrison troops pounded their chests in synchrony, their voices so deafening they drowned out the thunder. We shall repay it all in kind, sincerity and loyalty. Luo Mu heard the bellowing as he dashed toward the city wall and through the rain. He grabbed an assistant commander who had fled back into the city and demanded, Who shot that arrow? I would like to know that. The assistant commander had returned wounded from the first frenzied attack of the Imperial Army. Clutching his injured arm, he answered, The rain was too heavy, sir. It was impossible to see who it was. Luo Mu had indeed given his soldiers instructions that they could act, but only after the garrison troops made their first move. He had never expected Yao Wenyu would dare openly cast doubt on the Girl Emperor's origins in this confrontation. That ill-timed arrow had pierced through Chudu's last defense, quietly announcing that even the heavens had turned their back on them. Shut the gates and fight to the death. Luo Mu released the assistant commander, then shoved him toward the walls and barked in the heavy rain. If we can't hold the gates, we're dead. The streets were empty. All the commoners had barred their doors and windows and now hid in their cellars, shivering in fear. Public ditches carried much of the rain away with the sewage, and the gaily painted pleasure boats on the Kailing River swayed on the choppy waters. For the first time in hundreds of years, Chudu felt firsthand the pressure of the impending storm. The troops of the Shen clan have arrived outside our walls. Papers fluttered, forgotten, over the grounds of the Imperial College, as the students covered their heads and wailed, "There is no hope left for our great Zhou." Luomu, urging the soldiers to pound the battle drums, spotted a procession approaching from afar. He set down the drooping banner and knelt in greeting. "This humble subject has failed to live up to your majesty's graciousness. Tonight, I shall repay my country with my death. I vow never to bow to the rebels." Kong Qiu hobbled forward, gripping Li Jianting's arm. He was choked with emotion as he turned to the others and said, "Her Majesty is here, as am I. If we win tonight, all of you here will be the pillars of our great Zhou. If we lose and the city is breached, I, Kong Qiu, shall be the first to jump off the wall and die for my country." Luomu was so startled by Kong Qiu's agonized cry, he broke out in a cold sweat. He raised his head and saw each of the Grand Secretariat ministers looking equally solemn. Clearly, they were not putting on a show of courage, but were truly determined to give up their lives. Luomu had not expected them to be willing to go so far for the Zhou Empire, and in that instant, he felt ashamed. Still, he harbored hope that perhaps they could avoid disaster. Right. Why don't you actually stay alive and make yourself useful, and maybe you can still do something to help people. Maybe the country doesn't matter as much as the people do. Shen Zichuan only has 25,000 men. We have a real chance in this battle. Your Majesty, Your Excellencies. I think more people are going to show up. Like, let's say the Qidong troops. Luomu was still speaking when the enemy catapult sprang into action. A massive boulder smashed into the city gate with a crash like thunder, crushing the century-old stone inscription reading Chudu to smithereens. Oh, that is the moment in the sea drama when you know that it's over. the literal Chudu sign is gone. Henry, exactly. No, you don't get it. Helping the common people doesn't bring glory and esteem from the ruling class. Shui Shoujua raised his arm protectively in front of Li Jianting. Shen Zichuan is attacking the city. Protect the Emperor. Dagger held in his mouth, Chao Tianya crawled on his elbows along the damp darkness of the public ditch. After the flooding that had spurred a rebuilding of the sewer system, Pan Lin had given the construction plans for Chudu's public ditches to Xiao Chie, who had left them in his Plum Blossom Manor. After Shen Zichuan rebelled and fled to Zhongbo, it was these plans that had helped Chao Tianya and Fei Sheng escape the searches in Chudu. I love how many of these characters have, like, at one point, to win a battle or escape or something, have crawled through the ditches. Because Xiao Chia did that when he was, like, a kid, basically. It's just an interesting... I wonder if there, like, is there, like, a metaphor behind that? Of, like, you know, these characters, like, crawling up from literally being in these, like, disgusting ditches. But, you know, to rise up and, like, be successful. Something along those lines. I don't know. Yeah, I'm 14 without telling anyone. Yeah. They had long since committed to memory the routes of the intersecting public ditches beneath the city. Oh yeah, Vase, you said it's rebirth imagery. And then Blue crawling through the mud and ending up on top. Yeah. Chao Tianya's chin was buried in stinking sewage. He lifted his head slightly and slammed his shoulder up into the slanting wooden planks at the end of the tunnel. The chains and lock on the other side slid away with a clatter. Gu Qingqing, now shaven clean of his mustache, caught Chao Tianya's eye and grinned as he reached down to pull him out. It's been over a year since we last met, Ge Qingqing said. How is his lordship? Qiao Tianya removed his dagger from between his teeth and said, Fine. We've been keeping an eye on things in Chudu these past few days. Ge Qingqing cut the pleasantries and fished out a map, with neighborhoods circled in various colors. These are the scorpions we know about. Qiao Tianya looked at the dense clusters of circles covering the map and felt his skin crawl. There's a lot of them. These people can't put down roots, so they drift around Chudu, waiting for their orders. They come from all walks of life. Ge Qingqing put his palm over the marked portion. His lordship was right. There's a leader directing the operation. Qiao Tianya followed Ge Qingqing's pointing finger. The scorpions need to hold his lordship back for Amor's sake. Ge Qingqing dragged his finger in a circle around the spot. We need to act before they can make their move. Not a single one can be spared. His finger stopped over the palace. Qiao Tianya's dagger was still in his hand. This is our old job. Follow the old rules, he rasped. Since Master gave the order to kill, then leave no man alive under the Xiuchun sabers. We'll split up and move separately. He nailed the dagger into the lines that marked the palace. I'll head here. The palace. Oh, he's going to the palace. Okay. The main gate in the east hadn't been under attack for an hour when the Zhongbo garrison troops who had circled around near Mount Feng rammed a gap in the south side gate. The main forces of the capital troops guarding the east gate couldn't possibly have known that Shen Zichuan learned this tactic from Hassan. It was not only fast, it was ruthless. The capital troops at the south gate braced themselves against it, but before they could heave, a blade wedged itself in the gap. Pass the word, a young general of the capital troops shouted. The south gate has been breached. The next strike of the battering ram sent the city gate sliding sideways, knocking the defending soldiers to the ground. The Imperial army, who had been waiting outside, hauled themselves through the gap and leapt in, as nimble as monkeys. The archers inside the city readied themselves to shoot, but the Imperial army's reaction was even faster. They darted backward and took cover behind the gate itself. Before the capital troops could breathe a sigh of relief, the gate panel emitted a grating creak. The Imperial army had climbed atop each other's shoulders to the top of that beautifully crafted, heavy city gate and had ripped it right off its hinges. It still got it. An Imperial army soldier rapped on the gate panel and shouted to his brothers below him, "Guess what? This is the same fucking gate Arya had us repair for the Ministry of Works. Damn sturdy, too. We can take it with us as a shield to block arrows and smash these mangy dogs to death." Yeah, Blue, you said, as in Qiao Tianya, he's going for the head, who is likely Feng Chuan? I still don't know whose side Feng Chuan is on, and what he's really up to. So that... So we will see about that. Also, I love this so much. Also, my brain, I momentarily had to remind myself that the Imperial army is on our side. Because I'm like, okay, there's the capital troops. And then their army, the Imperial army, it's still called that, even though they're not, Imperial as in Chudu Imperial. So for half a second, I was like, and then I was like, oh yeah, okay. I just had to orient myself. Oh, we think he's Henry, you said you think Feng Chuan is a scorpion, but you're not sure. Or Blue, he could be a triple agent. Goodness. The sharp boost in morale that had come with the arrival of the Emperor lasted for only a moment before Shen Zichuan held those hopes down by the neck and obliterated them. The moment they breached the south gate, the Imperial army was like a duck to water, instantly back in their element. In the jostling chaos, Kong Qiu protected Li Jianting. The hair had come loose at her temples, and muddy water splattered over her clothes. Her ears buzzed from the constant bombardment of the catapults. Amid the wails and cries of countless people, her gaze roved over the mud and dust, and fell upon the fabled prefectural governor of Zhongbo. 2 years ago, Shen Zichuan had fled through the main gate, leaving behind Qi Huilian, who had raised his arms and shouted curses at the unjust world. Now, he urged his horse down the road leading up to the city gate, bringing not only his advisors, but a mighty army at his back. By the way, I don't like that he's here in the muck without his sword. Like, Shen Zichuan, why are we doing that? Traitor, Li Jianting bit the word out. Shen Zichuan looked up at her impassively, his message clear. In strategy alone, the young emperor was no match for a true overlord. From here, he would smash open the gates of Chudu. Oh, that's right. Overlord was the name of that chapter. And that is the end of the chapter. And yeah, you're correct, Blue. Not like he could use the sword without breaking his whole hand again. So he probably can't even use it properly anymore. So it's fine. It's all good. Well, by the way, when we come back after a break, we will be on page 227 for chapter 279, which is called Feng Chuan. Speak of the devil. We were just talking about our boy, our triple agent, or whatever the heck he is. So I'm going to take about a 10-minute break. And I will be back. Hello, I am back. Henry, I hear that you're doing a Yao and Yu cosplay. That is amazing. I love that. Oh, you'll be using Shenzi white robes as the underlayer, and you said like true besties, they share clothes in every iteration. I love that so much. Also, yeah, it's really nice to be able to do a cosplay and like share parts of it with another cosplay, so you don't have to get different stuff for everything. You already have a Pinterest board for photo refs. Okay, so you're doing Yao and Yu cosplay and then also Fei Du. That's amazing. He's my sweet cheese, my good time boy. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I feel like that's a cosplay that, like, it's kind of a challenge in a way, because it's like, will anyone recognize you? But if they do, like, then, you know, they know what's up. I'm trying to think. I didn't really have anything like that. But just, like, yeah, cosplaying, like, a side character is interesting. Because it's like, like, I don't know, at least for me, I feel like kind of like I'm doing this for myself. I don't know if anyone is going to know who I am, but it doesn't matter. Oh yeah, Henry, you said mainly cosplaying from historical Shansha Danmei has its perks. Yes, you can use aspects of costumes across each other. I still haven't done an actual proper like historical Danmei cosplay because I can't like sew personally, so I do need to go out and buy just like a pre-made cosplay thing. And I was thinking of being Lan Wangji, and it's just like, okay, I have to buy the Lan Wangji costume and the wig. And then I was hoping like, well, maybe the wig will be usable across multiple things. But the costume itself is kind of specific because of like the you know, like blue embroidery. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with that, but like you said, Lan Wang Yi. I guess that's what you could call me as Lan Wang Ji. You said a friend of yours has done a Chao Tianyao cosplay with the Yao and Yu of their own. Oh my god, that's so cute. No, I love that. Oh yeah, you know what? I can understand thinking there was a chapter called Feng Chuan before. I'm pretty sure there was a Fuman. And also, just like Feng Chuan has become such an important character, and there are so many like character name chapters. We probably were all just like, yep, it's happened before already, for sure. Oh yeah, Henry, that is a nice thing about being in a small fandom. People get so excited when they realize we were cosplaying. I was, oh god, what is the name of the... I'm trying to remember the English name of a manga. Oh yeah, Land of the Lustrous. I was Fos from Land of the Lustrous, and I was just kind of walking around and like nobody recognized me, and then like a couple people went up to me and were like, "Oh my god, are you Fos?" And I was like, "Yeah, yes." And I was just like, yay. It was really exciting because not that many people like knew who I was, but there was just like a few people, and it was great. Oh yeah, and was there another eunuch whose name started with Feng? I think there was another Feng something. I don't know. Yeah, we're all just having Mandela effect with the chapter names. So, well, speaking of Feng Chuan, here we are on page 227. Chapter 279, Feng Chuan. Fog shrouded Chudu. A veil of chilly rain obscured Li Jianting's figure. She was a cloud left behind among these towering palaces, dispersing so fast she could no longer be considered a true opponent. Blue, you said, do we have to? I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we do. Unfortunately, that is what I'm supposed to do on this stream. The eastern gate creaked and shook violently. Luo Mu, who had once again ascended to the top of the city wall, shouted urgent orders to the soldiers on the battlement. Archers, stand by. But before Luo Mu could issue his command, Tantai Hu's ringing voice cut through the rain. Ram the gate! Even as he spoke, the single-branch cannons of Zhongbo had already begun their battery. The capital troops, who had lived all their lives safe in Chudu, struggled to hold their ground. Unexpectedly, the ragtag crew Luo Mu had brought from Chazhou still had some fight left in them. Luo Mu had become adept at the art of defensive battle during his tenure as prefect. He'd had years of experience fighting bandits. In his eyes, Tantai Hu was a bandit, come to loot the capital. Bah! Luo Mu spat out a mouthful of mud as he coldly eyed the garrison troops storming the foot of the wall. Chudu's city walls have never fallen in centuries. You can fling stones at us until next year, and this place will remain an impregnable fortress. Gripping the battlement, he shouted down, Tantai Hu, you and I once worked together. If you want to save your dignity, why not surrender to the imperial court now? You can't win this war. Tantai Hu hadn't forgiven Luo Mu for the trap he'd set for him in Dunzhou. He'd been carrying the bubbling rage inside him all this time. At this, his fury blazed up. He stomped on the back of the battering ram and shouted, "Shut your fucking mouth." The kick roused his men into action. Pushing the battering ram with Tantai Hu, they smashed it into the east gate again. The gate let out an ear-splitting crack. Sneering, Luo Mu flung his arm down and barked, "Release." The rocks the Chazhou soldiers had prepared rained down like hail from the high walls onto the garrison troops below. Even with helmets, they couldn't withstand the attack, and those who were hit dropped to the ground, maimed or dead. The soldiers holding the battering ram ducked for cover with their arms over their heads. A rock struck the wagon's wheel, and the battering ram tipped to the side. Unable to hoist up the heavy wagon with their meager numbers, the few still standing watched as the battering ram went crashing into the mud. Tantai Hu wiped the muck off his face, furious that he had fallen for a trap again. Luo Mu had provoked him on purpose. Here we go with Tantai Hu being impulsive, causing issues. Lao Hu, Fei Sheng circled over on his horse, raising the Zhongbo military banner high, as he shouted across the distance between them. I'm here to pass on a message from his lordship. Hold nothing back in this battle. He waved the banner vigorously and pointed in the direction of Chudu. Succeed or fail, you, Tantai Hu, will always be a fine man of Zhongbo. A fine man. Tantai Hu's blood surged through his veins, so fast and hot that his palms trembled. He had been trained by Xiao Qiye himself, yet he'd made mistake after mistake under Shen Zichuan's command. But Shen Zichuan had continued to give him chances. He slapped himself harshly on the cheeks, the sound ringing out loud and clear in the rainstorm. His face flushed red. His scarred eyelid narrowed to a slit. Fury still burned in him, but he was more composed now. Grimly, he answered, if I don't emerge victorious in this battle, then I'm not worthy of being his lordship's subject and Arya's general. Even if I'm to be crushed to bits today, I shall break this gate down for my lord. The eunuchs and maids in the palace pushed each other out of the way as they grabbed whatever they could. The cacophony of war at the city gates could be heard all over Chudu. Everyone hoped to make their escape before the city was breached. A single lamp was lit in Mingli Hall, where Feng Chuan, having removed his eunuch robe, sat primly at the tea table. I forgot what we learned about Feng Chuan. Wasn't he taking medicine to appear to be a eunuch, but he's not actually a eunuch? I don't know, I didn't like forget, but it was just like, oh yeah, that happened last time, didn't it? Sorry, I totally lost my place thinking about that. Where the heck? Behind the layers of gauzy white curtains fluttering in the wind, his slim figure might have been mistaken for that of a boy. The rain drummed down like the urgent strumming of a chin. The color of the sky was the deep, flat gray of an endless night. Feng Chuan held his palm over the weak flame of the lamp and looked up, revealing half his face between the gaps in the sheer curtains. A pair of black boots stopped on the other side of the drapes. Rainwater dripped along the scabbard of the newcomer's sword, forming narrow ripples of light on the mirror-like tiles. "Whom did you expect to find?" Feng Chuan asked demurely. "Xiao Feng Chuan?" Rain-soaked hair hanging over his brow, Chao Tianya gripped his scabbard. He couldn't see clearly through the layers of gauze. His sleeves, sodden through, hung heavy at his wrists, as if to prevent him from drawing his blade. Feng Chuan caressed the lamp, the visible half of his face slowly breaking into a smile. His eye brimmed with amusement. "You were late," he whispered. Chao Tianya raised his eyes. Feng Chuan stood up. They were too far apart, as if they had never known each other. Their childhood friendship had washed away in those long, endless years. Song Yue, who had walked the world back to his own beginnings, still held a chin in his arms, but nothing else was the same. None who had left had ever come back. "You left Chudu with your blade, and became the swordsman you always spoke of. Chao Song Yue, I hated you so much in those years." Feng Chuan tilted his head slightly and pointed to his ear. "When all I had was this." That inconspicuous ear piercing betrayed years of filth. "All I had was this." Feng Chuan lowered his voice, his face a mask of gloom. "Look at me. What do I look like?" He looked so young, his too pale face having retained all the melancholy of youth. Melancholy of youth is an interesting way to describe it. Not like the innocence of youth or some other word, but like melancholy of youth. Even his thin limbs looked as though they had yet to mature into adulthood. "My father gave you the sword and sent me to Zhongbo, where I met Lei Changming." Feng Chuan squeezed the words through his teeth. "I wanted so badly to die. I almost broke free once, but Lei Jingzhe plucked me out of the ditch and dragged me back, like those dogs he kept. He kept me in Gadal for 5 years. 5 years. I was smarter than those bastards, so Amor set his sights on me. He wanted to make me a lizard who could lead the scorpions in the Zhou Empire on his behalf, but all I wanted was to go home. So Amor had let him go." We're back. Yeah, Henry, we're back in that one book again. "Go back to your homeland." Outside the golden yurt, Amor had handed Feng Chuan a dagger. "Go see your father and friends. If they are the same as before, you will have your freedom." Feng Chuan had taken him at his word. He had returned to the Zhou Empire and reunited with Xiao Chongbi, just as he had so desperately wanted. He gazed at Chao Tianya's shadow on the drapes and continued as if telling someone else's story. "I met my father. He was so happy. He stroked my hair, and then he knelt before me and cried bitter tears. Chao Tianya rasped, he sent you into the palace." That was only the first step in his plan. My father spent the latter half of his life atoning for his sins. Praying to the gods was useless. What happened to the Eastern Palace was his unending nightmare. The Grand Mentor didn't die that day, a fact that became the only hope among the former subjects of the Eastern Palace. My father concealed his identity and kept watch outside the Temple of Guilt, waiting for Qi Huilian to give him a task. To avoid suspicion, he had me take medicine. Feng Chuan pointed to his own thin chest. The weariness in his eyes was at odds with his youthful appearance. He schooled his expression, the subtle movement bizarre on his boyish face. But who would suspect me? Even if my name was Feng Chuan, no one would think I was Xiao Feng Chuan. As cautious as Xue Xiuzhuo had been, he had never doubted Feng Chuan's identity. As vigilant as Li Jianting was, she had believed Feng Chuan's lies. It wasn't that they weren't smart enough. Feng Chuan's appearance had long ceased to match his age. Xiao Chengbi's son would be 36 years old this year. But Feng Chuan looked as though he had yet to reach 20. This discrepancy had protected him for years in Chudu. I'm smiling right now because I had a theory about Shen Zichuan, like way back, that I don't think is accurate. I really don't think is accurate. But remember, we were talking about the prince who was killed when the Grand Mentor, like, survived that whole situation. And he was like, there maybe was a child that the prince had that was still alive. And then I was like, what if the medication that Shen Zichuan took made him look younger than he is, and he's actually older than everybody thinks he is? Of course, that would mean that Shen Zichuan is, like, continuing to lie to Xiao Qie about his age, unless he's, like, revealed it to Xiao Qie and, like, nobody else, and nobody else knows, and the narrative is, like, hiding it from us. I don't think it makes very much sense now, but I do love the fact that there's the possibility in this world that that's a thing that people can do. So I don't feel totally off base. Yeah, so I feel like I Blue, like you said, the fact that I manifested it at all. I manifested it for somebody else. I'm still like, well, I guess the possibility is open that it could be the case for Shen Zichuan too. I don't think it is, but that would be pretty funny, honestly. What can you imagine Xiao Qie's reaction to finding out he's in an age gap yaoi? That he's actually the younger one? No, I heavily doubt that, but the fact that it's a thing that can happen. Okay, back to things that are really happening. Feng Chuan's eyes dimmed. He was tired of crying, tired of laughing. His face wasn't even real. What could Shi Huilian achieve? That old lunatic was trapped in the Temple of Guilt for 20 years. He was a dog that had to wag its tail to beg for scraps, yet he still couldn't let go. All he thought of was the success or failure of the Zhou Empire. Shi Huilian hadn't initially known about Amor's involvement in these murky waters. It wasn't until Shen Zichuan stepped out of the Temple of Guilt and into the Xianda Emperor's court that he had looked back on the fall of Zhongbo and sensed a strange, indomitable force at play. Shi Huilian himself hadn't expected it to be part of a massive, intricate game, nor had he ever imagined that his own pawn, Feng Chuan, was also the scorpion Amor had sent back. You admired Shi Huilian. The sheer curtains obscured Feng Chuan's profile. How pathetic. What is the difference between Shi Huilian and Xue Xiuzhuo? These people claim they would willingly die for their righteous cause, so they treat others as pieces on their game board. For their cause, my father was willing to trap me in this shell. Feng Chuan sighed, looking wearily at the ceiling of Mingli Hall, leaving me neither human nor ghost, male nor female. Chao Tianya fixed his gaze on the silhouette on the fabric. The Eastern Palace fell, and the innocent were caught in the crossfire. Uncle Xiao's debt was repaid when your family's estates were seized. You don't owe anyone anything. Feng Chuan spread his arms, dragging his wide sleeves across the tea table. He chuckled and said in a tone both envious and mocking, Chao Songyue, it must be nice being a swordsman. Why do you think my father went to such lengths? Out of loyalty? The lamp on the table guttered, about to go out. The downfall of the crown prince and his eastern palace was brought about by treasonous papers forged by the embroidered uniform guard. Who could imitate the handwriting of the crown prince and his subordinates so convincingly? Another subordinate of the eastern palace, of course. Feng Chuan's smile disappeared. Chao Kong Hai dared to defect, precisely because he had been the one to do the forgery. Also, the Empress Dowager could take down the crown prince. Wait, what was the forgery that he's talking about? I'm trying so hard to follow, and I totally just I missed something. But there's a forgery. Okay. I occasionally I just have to look back at things or read things back, and then I figure it out. But sometimes, you know, you're reading out loud and you read something and your brain doesn't process it. And I think that just happened to me. I was also looking at the chat. Yeah, Blue, you called that the medicine was essentially a hormone blocker. You were right about that. So, Blue, you think that the medicine Feng Chuan took and the medicine Shen Zichuan was taking are essentially the same thing? Even if Shen Zichuan didn't take it as long or for the same purposes? Or do you think they're different medications? I am unclear on that. I think that they might be different, or maybe they're just different doses. I don't know. Oh, the forgery that incriminated the crown prince. The treasonous letters. Oh, okay. That's what we're talking about. Okay. I'm back on track. Oh, yeah, Blue, you said you were joking about Chen Zichuan not being a big burly man because he takes hormone blockers. Okay. Oh, back when we thought he might be half Bian Sha. Yes, Henry, as you said, maybe he just took a lower dose. Well, I guess that's possible. Chao Tianya's grip tightened on the hilt of his sword. Feng Chuan abruptly stood and stepped closer, his sleeve knocking over the tea table. To preserve the rest of your family, my father implored Hua Siqian to have mercy, but Hua Siqian refused. So my father went to plead with Shen Wei. Chao Tianya's breathing hitched. Zhongbo. That's right. Feng Chuan yanked aside the white drapes and said cruelly, Zhongbo fell due to a leaked military map from the Ministry of War. It was a map my father gave to Shen Wei, who in turn gave it to Amor as a gift upon their first meeting. Okay, I'm processing that. Okay. Muffled thunder crashed outside the palace hall. The color drained from Chao Tianya's face. Their scimitars slaughtered the cities of the 6 prefectures. Feng Chuan took another step, his sleeves trailing behind him. Madness roiled in his eyes. It was thanks to your kin and mine that Shen Zichuan lost his entire family in that massacre. Chao Tianya's knuckles cracked on the sword's hilt. Feng Chuan studied his expression, as if taking in the sight of him unraveling inch by inch. Chao Songyue had been worn down by the vicissitudes of life, but even that hadn't been enough. He still inspired envy. A life spent wandering was still a life that was free. Oh, our last download on Shenwei was that he didn't collude with Amor. I don't think he was innocent, but somebody else. The Shenwei stuff is so murky in my head because we've gotten so many downloads. I don't think he was innocent, but like, I think there was something chalked up to him that he didn't do. I can't remember now. Innocent in that instance. Okay. Yeah, I'm also, oh, Chao Kong Hai is the one who did the forgery that got the crown prince in trouble and got him killed. So that's the Chao relation. Yeah, Blue, when you said the reread is going to be insane. Feng Chuan advanced another step. The next flash of lightning seemed to split his face into halves of light and dark. I think that's where the half his face thing is coming from. The metaphor there is that he's like light and dark, playing both sides, or not sure where he stands, or just like he's representing kind of both positions. Hatred blazed in his chest, burning him black from within. Also, perhaps alluding to his physical state, that he feels sort of like not really a man or a woman. Yeah, including physically, yeah. I returned to my father's side, he continued, but he turned me into a monster to repay his debt. He grabbed Chao Tianya by his collar and leaned back, head tilted up to meet his eyes. In icy tones, he said, "Every day, every single day, I ask myself who I am. Am I a scorpion, a former subject, or countless people's dog?" His face twisted savagely. For his own bullshit penance, Xiao Chengbi killed me with his own hands. Look at me, Chao Songyue. Do you recognize me like this? Qi Huilian was heartless. He didn't trust me, yet he placed me here. I disguised myself as Mu Ru's younger brother and took Xiao Fuzi's place, imitating the pretentious affectations of a boy in his youth. Oh, he gritted his teeth and continued. All these conceited, self-righteous braggarts. Wasn't Qi Huilian's death wonderful? I did everything possible to take out Wei Huaigu for him. It was you. Chao Tianya raised his hand, but didn't touch Feng Chuan. You replaced the tag on the relay report Yang Cheng sent to the Ministry of Justice. Oh, he's the one who routed that to Wei Huaigu instead of where it was supposed to go. Okay, I'm kind of following. It was me. Feng Chuan's hands were trembling with excitement. Qi Huilian was so smart, but even he couldn't have anticipated he would die here. He would die there. He sent me here himself. If it weren't for Shen Zichuan, the world would be at my mercy. Oh, does Feng Chuan feel like if Shen Zichuan didn't exist, he would be the one who was, for lack of a better word in this situation, he would be the one who was groomed into trying to take over and be the future emperor? Because it has been kind of a thing where Qi Huilian was like, I'm going to teach you to do this, and you're going to get power from Chudu. So it's like, he was raised to do it, basically, Shen Zichuan was. So Feng Chuan is like, that would have been me. That would have been what he was taught to do in the position he was put in. But he ended up being the one who had to do this other thing, and... When Yang Cheng had reported Wei Huaigu for reselling the military grain, his relay report was originally meant to be sent to the Ministry of Justice. The tag had been switched to the Ministry of Revenue midway through the journey. Thank you for the reminder. Wei Huaigu thought he had been exposed. To preserve the noble clans, he opted to turn himself in, indirectly propelling Xue Xiuzhuo into action. Henry, you said it's interesting that he's socially both male and female too. As in, he has experience being used both as a victim of SA and as a tool for his father's redemption, with no regard for his own wants. That's a good point. Like, the whole half and half split of his face and the light on his face and all that stuff, that's a really good, like, image for just, like, all of these different situations that he's in. The pox during the Tianqian Emperor's reign was also your doing. Chao Tianya's fingers curled slightly in the air. Back then, Donglong Street's public ditches had been clogged, leading to the collapse of Ohua Pavilion and the ensuing epidemic. Chao Tianya had once mentioned during his discussion with Xiao Chie that the pox likely hadn't originated on Donglong Street, but in the palace. Had Li Jianheng died that day, I'd have won this game, Feng Chuan hissed. Of all the Scorpion's former subordinates and informers hiding in the inner court, Feng Chuan was the only one who'd maintained the upper hand through it all. His multiple identities had given him access to the intelligence of all the players in the game. He was like a venomous spider crouched in the center of its web, contemplating and observing everyone's movements at every single moment. There was no emotion in Qiao Tianya's reddened eyes. His throat throbbed. Even as Feng Chuan pulled at his collar, he didn't move his hand from his sword. But you still let Uncle Xiao ride into battle. And Feng Chuan's position, 100% valid. No wonder he was, like, contemplating, like, killing his dad right there. The rainstorm muffled the sound of footsteps outside the hall. Feng Chuan's expression was frozen on his numb face. Eyes red, he lifted his chin and said lightly, "Because I don't want to play anymore." His contorted shadow crept across the ground, just as it followed him as he crawled through this inner palace. As the days turned endlessly into nights, he'd gradually lost sight of who he was. He worked for everyone, but he also betrayed everyone. He was not the winner at all. He was a nobody on this jumbled board, a puppet who'd slipped free of his strings. "I waited for you all in Zhongbo for a very long time," said Qiao Tianya. "But in all these years, not a single one came." Tears coursed down Feng Chuan's face. His eyes curved into crescents. Shaking his head, he said, "Oh, Song Yue." He seemed to have returned to the day they parted. His eyes held a mixture of envy and disdain. "That's because everyone is dead." Pain stabbed through Qiao Tianya's heart. His sword-wielding hand trembled uncontrollably. Under the howls of the torrential rain, he seemed to have woken up from slumber, broken free of that never-ending dream, and finally arrived at an understanding. Everyone was dead. This is a bit of a longer chapter, and I believe I still have one after this. Let me make sure of that. But, so we're gonna go over a little bit today. Am I reading 280? Yeah, I'm reading 280. So, yeah, we're gonna go over a little bit. That's okay. I know, right? Can you please catch a break? The Imperial Army has breached the city. The south gate was wide open. The capital troops raced as fast as they could in every direction to pass on the news. We need reinforcements. There aren't any. Luomu's men shoved the capital troops out of the way as they peered through the rain toward the eastern gate. The rebels have surrounded Chudu. Huaizhou. Where are the reinforcements from Huaizhou? Chen Zhen held the hem of his robe out of the puddles. We sent someone after Tao Ming left. There was no response to our summons. Liang Cuishan wiped rainwater from his face and looked out of the city. They probably won't be coming. There are still carriages at the western gate. Xue Shouzhuo turned and strode through the rain to grasp Li Jianting tightly by the arm. Your Majesty, Chudu can no longer be defended, but there's still time to turn things around in Jueshi. Nah, she said she lives and dies with the Empire. I don't think she is interested in that. Li Jianting trembled amid the sounds of blades and dying cries. She grasped Xue Shouzhuo in return. Her face was resolute as she said, "We will defend the Empire's gates with our teacher." Xue Shouzhuo gazed at her. Ministers ought to give their lives for a sovereign in danger. This subject still lives. There is no reason for your Majesty to guard the gates. We can't abandon teacher to flee. Li Jianting's voice was hoarse. Rain poured down all around her. Beads of water caught on her long lashes, so that she seemed to be weeping. Keyword seemed to be, because is she weeping? Because it kind of sounds like she's trying to pull Xue Shouzhuo into this. Like, I'm gonna die. but so are you. You're not going anywhere either. Even if the city is breached, we will live and die with all of you. Shui Shoujuo's hair was damp. He had changed far too much in the short span of 1 year. He had seized the job of defending the old ways from Hai Liangyi's hands. Faced with the fractured imperial court where everyone had their own agenda, he had done all he could. The decline of the stability-minded moderates started and ended with him. He would accompany the Zhou Empire through the final leg of its journey. Hearing these words from your majesty, this humble subject has no more regrets. Shui Shoujuo straightened up and tidied his robes and crown in the heavy rain. This humble subject has had the honor of being your majesty's teacher, so let me walk this last stretch of the road on your behalf. Li Jianting's shoulders shook with silent sobs. I guess she is really crying. Unless she's really good at cry acting. I was just looking at that seemed to be weeping, and I was like, interesting. But I might be wrong about that. An earth-shattering crash rang out as the battering ram struck the eastern gate one final time. The doors, unable to withstand the impact, opened a crack. The garrison troops had already thrust their blades in. Luo Mu's soldiers and capital troops braced their shoulders against the door from within, while Tantai Hu led his men to heave against it from outside. Shui Shoujuo turned and flicked his sleeves aside, shouting, "Escort Her Majesty out of the city." Li Jianting had refused to leave, but the guards had already swarmed her. She gazed back despondently in the rain. All the other court ministers had their backs to her. No one turned. "Teacher," she shouted. Shui Shoujuo made his way up the city wall, calm and composed under the deafening bombardment of the catapults. He called down towards the outside of the city. "Is Shen Zichuan there?" Raindrops pelted onto armor. Frostfall's white coat stood out conspicuously in the mass of soldiers below. Rows of military flags flapped behind Shen Zichuan. He turned towards Shui Shoujuo, as though observing his one true opponent in this battle. The front of Shui Shoujuo's robe was soaked from the rain, and the beast pattern on his Mandarin square had blurred. He didn't wipe the water from his face. Even at this moment, that stubbornness of his was undiminished. He raised his hand, displaying the authority token he was holding. "When I helped you become the vice commander of the embroidered uniform guard," Shui Shoujuo said, his eyes placid, "I suspected you of being a scorpion. I was wrong. You are far more terrifying than a scorpion. If you walk through the gates of Chudu bearing Shen Wei's name, you'll go down in history as the greatest sinner of our age." Raindrops slid down the side of Shen Zichuan's face. His expression was severe and ruthless, and his expressive eyes appeared particularly cold and detached. At last he spoke. "I was a sinner from the first time I stood before this gate. You've never been able to predict whether I'd live or die. If I can endure being reviled by all before today, I can shoulder the perpetual infamy in days to come." The gale lifted Shen Zichuan's hair. Slowly, he bared his teeth in a chilling smile beneath the torrential rain. "Return to me my teacher, my advisor, my brother, all of them." The city gate toppled with a crash that shook the ground. Tantai Hu charged into the gate tunnel. Pieces of the battlements went flying from the impact of the ballista. 2 gates had been breached. The Imperial Army and the Zhongbo garrison troops came together from the south and east, clashing with the capital troops and Luo Mu's soldiers in the streets and alleys of Chudu. Every time I want to say shoulders for some reason instead of soldiers. A piece of flying debris cut Shui Shoujuo's cheek, and blood flowed from the wound. Gripping his authority token, All he could do was watch as the stone monument that symbolized the Zhou Empire's dignity shattered on the ground. You have come to collect this debt, and I'm willing to pay for it with my life. Shui Shoujuo raised his voice amid the burgeoning chaos. It was I who killed Qi Huilian, and I who killed Ya Wenyu. You can stop now. Where horses trample fertile farmland, the ravages of war spread. Shen Zichuan, I will give you my head. Tantai Hu cut down the soldier before him. As he lifted his blade again, he caught a familiar smell. He wiped blood from his face and flipped over the corpse of another soldier with his toe. To the bafflement of the others, he bent and began peeling away the man's clothes. Sorry, what is this smell? Shen Zichuan didn't reply. The heavy crossbows at the top of the city wall unleashed a barrage of arrows. Frostfall danced nervously in place. Amid the urgent chorus of the rain, Fei Sheng's ears twitched. Expressing shifting, he tumbled off the back of his horse and launched himself into the air, using a soldier's shield as a springboard. Master, watch out. Shen Zichuan had no cover. Just as Fei Sheng thought he wouldn't make it in time, he saw Shen Zichuan fling open his folding fan and block the arrow. But the fan's bamboo spine was too fragile. It snapped with a crack. The delay was enough. There was no time to draw his blade. In that instant, Fei Sheng grabbed that sharp arrow with his bare hand and landed steadily on his feet. Now we have Frostfall is the horse, and Avalanche is the sword. Well, he landed steadily on his feet, so that's good. I guess. The Ara army. Yeah. Did you know? Feng Chuan held up his index finger and pointed at Xiao Tianya. The smartest people are also the most foolish. I thought they were having too hard of a time fighting each other, so I set up an arena for them here. Feng Chuan had deceived Qi Huilian, lied to Shui Shoujuo, and made a fool of Amor. He had made all these brilliant players trip when they least expected it. His cunning was invisible, a sharp blade that left no trace. He refused to be manipulated by anyone. I've tossed the dice. Feng Chuan spread his arms wide and laughed softly in the empty Mingli Hall. Whoever lives to step through the doors of the palace today will be the winner of this game. Fucking. Tantai Hu gazed down at the tattoo on the corpse. He raised his head to look at the dense swarm of Cha-Zhou soldiers before them and felt his blood run cold. He spat on the ground. These soldiers are all scorpions. That's why he was looking at the body. That's the end of the chapter. So we have one more chapter today. Yeah, I don't know. We sound a little bit cooked. Somehow things are gonna work out, but we're on page 241 for chapter 280, which is called Exiled. Xiao Qiye woke in his tent. He'd been sleeping with his head on his arms, which had gone numb. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling for a while. He thought he'd dreamed of a heavy downpour in Chudu, which is exactly what is happening. Lu Guangbai lifted the tent flap. Standing at the entrance, he wiped sweat off his nape with the handkerchief and said, "The falcons on patrol discovered Sakur falcons on the eastern side." I have to drink to nape, even though it's not that kind of nape, so... Gu Jin found traces of passage from a horse caravan there. It's a supply squad from the Hulu tribe. He rinsed his handkerchief in the copper basin. Amor has refused to surrender. He means to fight to the death. Xiao Qiye sat up, propping his arm on his knee. Winter is coming. The Hulu tribe won't be able to graze their sheep. This is the last of their food. Amor won't show his face because he's conserving his strength. He's seen through you. He knows you're waiting for him to play into our hands. Lu Guangbai hung up the handkerchief to dry. He's stalling for time. The Hulu tribe had exhausted themselves to supply Hasen, and now they were giving their entire tribe's provisions to Amor. If they wanted to survive the coming winter, they would have to slaughter their livestock. Amor was already an arrow at the end of its flight. What was he still waiting for? Xiao Qie stood and made his way out of the tent. He looked out at the endless expanse of sand dunes. Meng flew down from the flagpole and landed on his raised right arm. Amor is a fine general, he said, but he is an even better politician. Amor was a master at manipulation. He'd sustained the battlefields in the north and south, and established the black and white scorpions, all to better control his enemy. He was old, and could no longer ride valiantly across the battlefields as his son Hasen had. But that didn't mean he was helpless against Xiao Qie. Now that he'd lost his edge, the only way he could make Xiao Qie withdraw his troops was to crush Xiao Qie's backer, Shen Zichun. Xiao Qie's eyes were sharp as a blade when he looked back at Lu Guangbai. He's waiting for news from Chudu. Does that mean that if Shen Zichun, if they successfully conquer Chudu, that Amor and his people are going to show up to Chudu to fight them there? Possibly. Tantai Hu had stirred up a hornet's nest with his exclamation. Before he could dodge, a scimitar slashed off his top knot, sending his black hair scattering. It had been cut short, making him look almost bald in the center. Oh, well, that's... Oh, right, the capital is swarming with scorpions, so that would make sense. They're already there. Of course, I didn't even... My brain... Of course, okay. Yes. Yeah, I don't like the cutting off the top knot either. Motherfucker. Tantai Hu grabbed a handful of his short hair. They were colluding with Amor the whole time. The real traitors are right here. Yeah, they're already there. Yep. Raindrops splashed along the edges of swinging blades. Countless soldiers charged forward, brandishing their swords before them, armor crashing against armor in the gate tunnel, as they charged forward with all their might. Very few of Lo Mu's men wielded scimitars. This weapon was too conspicuous. But many had opted to hang pike daggers beside their standard blades. The city gates have been breached. Shen Zichun promptly came to a decision and snapped his splintered folding fan shut. Tell Shenwei, there are Biansha spies in Chudu. We have no choice but to ride into the city. Fei Sheng didn't dare tarry. He threw away the arrow. As he got on his horse, he pointed back toward the camp and said to his subordinate, "Convey his lordship's order." I don't know what this means. There's a scene break, but after the word order, there's a dash, as though he was cut off by something. But immediately followed by a scene break. So if he was cut off by something, I don't know what the heck that was. That's weird. Sen Yu still hadn't made it back to the city with the students when a soldier galloped past him into Zhongbo's camp and shouted, "There are Biansha soldiers hiding in Chudu. The lives of thousands are at stake. Gao Zhongxiong, receive your orders." Inside the tent, Gao Zhongxiong shoved aside the cluttered papers on his desk and picked up his brush. Rain drummed on the tent ceiling as he dipped the brush into the ink and waited with bated breath. Heaven is helping his lordship. Yao Wenyu coughed from his seat by the window. He took a moment to catch his breath, then propped himself up and said to Gao Zhongxiong, "If this is a move by Chudu, it's tantamount to suicide. Shen Wei's reputation as the national traitor can be relinquished to someone more worthy now. Shen Wei. God, we're talking about Shen Wei and Shen Wei in the same paragraph. I cannot deal. Shen Wei. His lordship wants you to announce to the world that the scourge of the empire is within Shudu itself. The timing of the scorpion's arrival was too perfect. Just like Xiao Changbi, who'd rashly mobilized his troops, Shen Zichuan now had all the justification he needed. The Zhongbo garrison troops couldn't kill without restraint as they tried to capture the city, so dealing with tens of thousands of Chazhou's soldiers was a tricky business. But once those soldiers became scorpions, they were external foes, the Zhou Empire's greatest nemesis. The foreign enemies stand before us. The city gates have been breached, and a sovereign with just cause has ridden bravely into the city. This is heaven's will. Yao Wenyu covered his mouth, choking a few times as he coughed. He gripped the edge of the window for support and squeezed out a laugh. The pawn placed on the game board of the imperial court acts not of his own volition. The Grand Mentor was truly remarkable. We will gladly accept this king-slaying blade named Feng Chuan. He raised his dampened eyes. Gazing at the heavy rain, he rasped. Shui Yanqing has lost. I still am like, how do we use Feng Chuan as a blade? He's a little unwieldy. You don't really know what he's going to do. I don't know how it helps them. But, you know, it's playing like 10D chess at this point. Yeah, Henry squeezed out a laugh. Oh, we're so cooked. Oh, man. Shui Shoujuo had won a match in a rainstorm. He had killed Qi Huilian, exiled Yao Wenyu, and driven Hai Liangyi to his death. Yet he was similarly stymied by others' pawns. Lu Guangbai had rebelled, Xiao Chia had returned to his pack, and Shen Zichuan had secured Zhongbo under his rule. His so-called foolproof plan was all an illusion. He had been forced to the brink by his own hands. He had gone to great lengths to dredge up the scorpions, when the scorpions had been right under his nose all along. Qi Huilian once suffered a terrible setback when the crown prince was betrayed. What Feng Chuan didn't understand was that intelligent people didn't make the same mistake twice. The crown prince had been lost because of a traitor, so Qi Huilian would never allow Shen Zichuan to fall into the hands of a mole. The Eastern Palace had had so many subordinates. Why did Qi Huilian choose the Shao and Qiao families? Because these were men who were racked with guilt. Compared to the others who had done their best for the Eastern Palace from beginning to end, Xiao Changbi was a man who'd driven himself into a dead end. He'd worked under the Ministry of War and had never done a bad deed. But because he placed too much value on sentiment, he let his private affairs get in the way of his official duties. He bent over backward to save the Qiao family, but Qiao Konghai still died. He betrayed his former master in the Eastern Palace, yet he failed to save a single person, and even lost his son in the process. And that was only the beginning. The moment news of Zhongbo's defeat broke, Xiao Changbi had built a prison and trapped himself inside it, the prisoner of his own conscience for all eternity. This blood debt had surpassed all of Xiao Changbi's personal relationships. To this end, he could blind his own eye, destroy his own voice, and give away his own son. He went to his knees before the Buddha statue and wept bitter tears, but Qi Huilian refused to use him. That was the most ruthless and brilliant thing about Qi Huilian. The Grand Mentor had never used Xiao Changbi when he was alive, and for every day that passed after Qi Huilian's death, the shackled, useless Xiao Changbi fell deeper into agony. The agony and guilt spurred him on, and he, in turn, spurred on Feng Chuan. Feng Chuan struggled to survive in the crack into which he had fallen. No matter whose pawn he was, Qi Huilian dared to bet that his shackles were fastened with the word father. Xiao Changbi was Feng Chuan's lock, dead or alive. I guess that sort of helped, but it didn't quite work to shackle him completely. The day Feng Chuan bade Xiao Changbi farewell, he had held the shaving blade against the side of Xiao Changbi's neck, but still he hadn't been able to press down. Okay, that's a good point. He wasn't actually able to do it himself. Xue Shouzhuo regarded people as pawns, while Qi Huilian treated pawns as people. Inside the Temple of Guilt, he taught and guided Shen Zichuan in the art of manipulation, where all vulnerabilities hinged on one word: sentiment. Shen Zichuan opened his eyes and saw the other side of the tunnel at the eastern gate. Rain and snow descended in curtains, and the past played hazily upon them. Qi Huilian's figure seemed to be standing there, his chained arms raised high. As he threw his head back and howled his last words, he still refused to look back at Shen Zichuan. "Oh, Lanzhou, don't be afraid." Oh, that's right. Shen Zichuan has been out of Chudu for so long. Coming back into Chudu must bring up a lot of stuff. Shen Zichuan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, Frostfall charged forward. Shen Zichuan's sleeves billowed in the frost and snow, rousing a gale behind him. He was like the icy glint of a blade among dark clouds, poised to return to its sheath. In this moment, he was bound to pierce through heaven and earth. He who carries the will of the people enacts the will of the heavens. A thunderclap exploded overhead. Luomu had lost control over his ragged forces. He hastily retreated amid the mayhem and shouted to the other officials, "The troops have turned renegade." The icy downpour was blinding. Xue Shouzhuo couldn't keep steady on his feet. He clung to the city wall with the court officials and watched as Shen Zichuan speared through the rain at the head of the army. The morale of the garrison troops was at an all-time high as they followed that figure in white, their momentum unstoppable. The Imperial Army at the South Gate engaged the capital troops in the city's alleyways, a battlefield they knew better than the capital troops themselves. When it came to fighting on the streets here, they were unrivaled. Blood splashed the walls. Tavern banners and street-side booths tumbled to the ground. Shen Zichuan urged his horse toward the city wall and through the tunnel, breaking through the main gate of Chudu, just as he'd always dreamed. By his side, Fei Sheng raised Zhongbo's banner high, while the garrison troops braved the rain of arrows from the battlements and streamed into the city. "The city is breached." A shrill, miserable wail rang out from the front of the Imperial College. The cries of thousands of students rose amid the gusting sleet. Kong Qiu staggered forward, holding the battlement for support as he wept. "Oh, the centuries-long reign of our great Zhou!" The bronze bell at the summit of Mount Bodhi tolled. The drawn-out clinging stirred up a wave of wind, startling the birds within the layers of clouds. The city gate fell over with a thunderous crash. Countless proclamations of war fluttered through the air. Xue Shouzhuo's cheeks were clammy and cold. He looked up at the flat wasteland of clouds. The burden that had weighed on his shoulders all this time went up in smoke in the echo of the collapsed city gates. He wiped away the rainwater on his face, hearing wails rising all around him. This is the end. Xue Shouzhuo's eyes were like pools of stagnant water as he silently threw away his authority token. That token, etched with the golden glory of the Li clan, tumbled to the ground, where passing hooves trampled it into pieces, scattering the splinters into the mud. Tantai Hu shoved a scimitar off with his blade, and his opponent reeled back in a flurry of footsteps. He swung his sword at a sharp angle, and the edge screeched against the scimitar, slicing the other man's fingers clean off. Tantai Hu kicked the man off his feet, and brandished his sword again, carving open a bloody path for Shen Sichuan as he shouted himself hoarse. "Slay the enemies!" Yeah, I think this is the end of Chudu, but we still got a little more to go. As far as the scorpions being there, that complicates things. Henry, you said, Blue, how do you think we will fare with this paranoia after we finish this and get back to being on Ben? to case file. Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Just some soldiers' fingers. Not anybody important. Tantai Hu cut off some guy's fingers. Qiao Tianya nudged his sword from its scabbard, fingers pressed against the edge of the blade. The rain was still falling outside the hall, but the wind had since stopped. Those sheer white drapes hung limp to the ground. The small puddle at his feet reflected the gleam of the sword's edge. Feng Chuan reached over and toppled the dying lamp. His sleeves brushed against that last fleck of light. "You've become Shen Sichuan's blade, and now you are going to kill me." The lock of hair over Qiao Tianya's forehead covered his eyes. He couldn't tell if Feng Chuan was crying or laughing. He could only see his shoulders shaking within the dimness as he lightly clapped his hands. Beads of water slid down Qiao Tianya's wet hair and fell onto the bridge of his nose. As quick as a breath, his sword shot from its sheath. There was a shriek of metal against metal, and a sharp glint as he struck away a flying needle. Like a wraith, the wardrobe attendant materialized behind the white drapes and pulled off his hat. He locked eyes with Qiao Tianya through the gauze. The only sound was a water droplet splashing softly to the ground. Qiao Tianya sprang toward him like a furious leopard, channeling all of his regret into his sword as he slashed through the sheer draperies. The attendant retreated before his ferocious attack. With the flip of his narrow sleeve, silver threads shot out, lodging into the vermilion pillar beside Qiao Tianya as he dodged away. The attendant flipped backward and into the air, using the silver threads to soar up, light as a swallow. Lamp oil dripped onto the ground, and tongues of flame licked the floor, blazing as they chased Feng Chuan's sleeve. There's another scene break, so we don't immediately see the aftermath of that situation. I do love channeling all of his regret into his sword. Right, Blue, edgily hiding his eyes like a 2000s sad boy yaoi main lead. Although the Zhongbo garrison troops avoided the commoners of Chudu, the people still fled in terror. The streets were pandemonium. Tantai Hu pushed people out of the way, fearing the scorpions would use the commoners against them. "Get these people out of here." Tantai Hu's palms were so slick with blood, he had trouble gripping his blade. But it was too late. The people blocking the streets crashed into the squads of scorpions. It was too dark to tell one group of soldiers from another. The scorpions hacked the commoners' heads off with their scimitars and held them high over the crowd. In the tongue of the Zhou Empire, one proclaimed, "The governor said slaughter the whole city." Oh no! They're gonna make it look like Shen Sichuan wants to kill random civilians. Oh god, okay. Fei Sheng raised his torch and shouted, galloping through the streets. "The Biansha Baldies have infiltrated the city. Luo Mu's soldiers are the enemy. Run if you don't want to die." but the panicking commoners trapped in the crush couldn't hear Fei Sheng. The crowd jostled against the scorpions and were slaughtered. In desperation, they turned around and swarmed toward the garrison troops. The street wasn't wide enough for so many people, and a toppled battering ram blocked the way behind the garrison troops, who were knocked out of formation by the crowd surging toward them. The scorpions wore no armor. They blended in with the common people running this way and that, stabbing the garrison troops whenever they passed close enough. More than 10 garrison soldiers at the front were caught off guard by their attacks, and dropped to the ground, dead. The Zhongbo rebels are murdering people. Oh my god, I hate this so much. We're so close to the end, you guys. Can we just... Oh god. Oh god, I just lost my place. Hold on. Where the heck was I, guys? Oh shoot. I got so upset by this that I just, like, flipped to a different okay, there we are. Fleeing for their lives, the commoners covered their faces and wailed, trapped between the two forces. In the overlapping shadows, they mistook the scorpions for the garrison troops, and thought Zhongbo had surrounded them for a massacre. Deafening cries reverberated through the sky. What a headache. That's putting it lightly. Fei Sheng wheeled his horse around and returned to Shen Zichuan's side. Master, what should we do? The main roads are all blocked. It was dark now. Banners that had caught fire burned above the heads of the crowd. The rain had abated, and the flakes of snow were as large as tufts of cotton and as light as foam. Shen Zichuan gripped the reins and looked toward the city wall. Light up the watchtower. Seize control of the east gate and sound the alarm. Tell the Imperial Army at the south gate to clear the streets. The remaining garrison troops swiftly passed through the tunnels. The arrows along the battlements were running low, and close-quarters battles broke out all along the foot of the wall. As the torches of the garrison troops flared one by one, seizing the watchtower became top priority. Shen Zichuan carried a short blade on him. As Frostfall cantered through the crowd, he felt a gust of wind at his side. He barely dodged a pike dagger that swiped past his cheek, so close he felt the cold breeze in his wake. His blade left its sheath, spinning in his left hand as it struck away the pike dagger. His wounds had yet to heal. The strike only had enough power to knock the scorpion's dagger askew. The scorpion dropped the dagger and caught it in his other hand, then stabbed for Shen Zichuan's neck. The banner overhead burst into flames, and ashes rained down from above and danced around Shen Zichuan's head. He seized the chance to roll off his horse. Frostfall, as if understanding his intent, took off at a gallop. Shen Zichuan evaded the stab and ran a few strides after Frostfall. The scorpion's dagger swung through empty air, and in his fleeting instant of disorientation, his outstretched arm was caught in Shen Zichuan's grasp. The scorpion was stunned, but delight immediately followed. He exclaimed in the Biansha tongue, "He's got no strength." Shen Zichuan released him and struck the side of the scorpion's arm. The scorpion thought Shen Zichuan was about to fling him over his shoulder, and crouched to stabilize his lower body, but Shen Zichuan spun and kicked him hard in the chest instead. The scorpion spread both arms and said in a booming voice, "Overestimating your own strength." Two of Shen Zichuan's long, slender fingers reached out, jabbing toward the center of the scorpion's brows. The scorpion squeezed his eyes shut. Shen Zichuan let out a soft laugh. His short blade slipped from his hand. He spun again and kicked the falling blade toward the scorpion. Caught off guard, the scorpion took the full length of the blade in his belly. Blood sprayed, and he let loose a devastating scream. Shen Zichuan turned a deaf ear to it. The flames behind him flared. His shadow lengthened until it filled the street. Seeing their opportunity, Fei Sheng bellowed. Luo Mu colluded with the Biansha people. And now the foreign enemies are in the city. The garrison troops will slay our enemies. The rest of you, get out of the way. Light from the torches on the watchtower at the east gate swayed against the sky. Stepping up on the railings, The garrison troops held up their Zhongbo authority tokens and shouted down with all their might. By order of the prefectural governor, kill the enemies, kill the traitors, kill the rats. Their attempt to incite the citizens had failed, and the tunnels were all packed tight with the garrison troops. The scorpions turned and retreated. Mayhem had overtaken the city, and blood flowed like rivers as the capital troops trying to hold the gate were slain by the imperial army. Most of the battlements along the wall had already collapsed. Xue Xiujuo's official's robe was badly shredded. He made a wretched sight, standing stunned until someone yanked him hard in an attempt to move him. The mute boy, cloth bundle slung over his shoulder, was leading young Master Jin by the hand. Oh, young Master Jin is in Han Jin? He gestured at Xue Xiujuo in the din, making urgent sounds as he dragged Xue Xiujuo toward the steps. Xue Xiujuo stumbled and braced himself against the wall as he looked at the boy. Young Master Jin. He was Xue Xiuyi's son, whom Xue Xiujuo had raised at his side. The boy was so frightened his face was awash in tears. Yet he still held on to Xue Xiujuo's hem and cried, Uncle! Yeah, for real, leave the kid alone. The poor Xue Xiuyi's son. Please leave him alone. The mute boy stomped his foot anxiously and continued tugging at Xue Xiujuo's robe, motioning for him to run. Xue Xiujuo raised his hand to stroke his nephew's cheek. You're a good boy. The child raised his head, feeling the rain on his face. Shoulders hunched, Xue Xiujuo turned away from the light, keeping all of his weaknesses to himself. This brief moment felt as if it was the only private interlude of his life, the only moment that ever belonged to him. The mute boy started to cry. He shouted at Xue Xiujuo with all the voice he could muster, and tugged at his hem until his fingers were red. Maybe we should listen to him. Straightening his back, Xue Xiujuo gently broke himself free of the boy's hold. He gave him a push on his shoulder. Go, both of you. The young master sobbed and pulled at Xue Xiujuo, shouting, Uncle! Xue Xiujuo paid him no heed. Okay, I think the kid is going to be okay, but Xue Xiujuo is not. He's a good, foster dad, whatever we call him, I don't know. Adoptive dad, basically. The rain tonight was lighter than it had been 2 years ago, but the sky was the same grim, bleak gray. A lone man guarded this city. Wait, before I continue, I was gonna say, Vase, you said, isn't Hanjin the one Shen Zichuan had imprisoned? I don't remember. I just know we ran into a Hanjin, and he was, like, described as being kind of manic and crazed, and, like, he had been, like, possibly homeless or something, and he showed up. I forget who he was talking to now. But he showed up, and I was like, okay, someone remind me who this is. A lone man guarded this city. Long before the daylight died, he had heard the echoes of its decay, but he still couldn't accept it. He couldn't stand to see the behemoth that once towered here exit the stage in such a lonesome manner. Oh, that was a different Jin. Okay. Yeah, no, there's so many characters. It's hard. Xue Xiujuo made his way down the steps in solitude, never looking back. So it's thanks to Yuan Zhuo that you pushed so hard for the yellow register in Zhongbo, Xue Xiujuo said, halting in his tracks and observing Shen Zichuan below. That's right, they're having the little confrontation. Shen Zichuan did not answer. In the shadows, Xue Xiujuo brushed dust off his sleeves. I held Qi Huilian in high esteem, and set my feet on the same path he took. He eyed Shen Zichuan, but I wasn't as ruthless as he was. It was too easy to gamble on a life. The hard part was daring to put that life into the game, when only you could see the whole board. Qi Huilian had dared to do just that, and his seemingly insane actions had all been predicated on his unconditional trust in Chen Zichuan. Lanzhou was not his pawn. It was precisely because of this that Qi Huilian left nothing behind for him. Shen Zichuan needed no restraints. Hand brushing over the top of Shen Zichuan's hair, as a father would to honor a coming of age, Qi Huilian had already pointed the way for him during the 5 years they spent beside each other, day and night. I have taught you, and given you the name Lanzhou. That was everything Qi Huilian had. The Zhou Empire has lived through the era of heroes. For hundreds of years, even foreign powers have not been able to knock down the gate. Now we have lost it to you. Xue Shouzhuo gazed at Shen Zichuan, a fish once trapped in a boiling cauldron. I've heard plenty of speculation. Even Yuan Zhuo has fantasized that I might be a secret descendant of the Li bloodline hidden away by Shen Wei. Oh, that's right. Yeah, when you did say something like that. Shen Zichuan turned his gaze to the palace. But I am the son of a guilty official. Nothing more. The whole world has been scrambling over one another looking for an imperial heir. Only Xiansheng went the opposite way. He who carries the will of the people depends not on the will of the heavens. Yeah, so it really would be out of theme for Shen Zichuan to secretly be a Li descendant. I wouldn't know how you would carry that out after saying all this. That it was right there. He who carries the will of the people depends not on the will of the heavens. Yep. That's it. Qi Huilian turned the tide through sheer force of will, and for that I admire him. Xue Shouzhuo exhaled deeply and continued, his voice low. My sovereign is young, and so it is I, Xue Shouzhuo, who have come to surrender today. The city gates are breached, and the public roads are open. Shen Zichuan, do not kill our innocents. I have come to receive you. I don't know how to tell you this, but he's not the one killing your innocents. His voice was like a clap of thunder, so sudden and deafening that the officials at the top of the city wall stood paralyzed. Opening the gates in surrender was a humiliation that could never be erased, and now Shui Yanqing alone had shouldered it. No, Kong Qiu cried out and beat his chest in anguish. Oh, our great Zhou. I sure hope this is not a trap. The court officials held each other in inconsolable grief, as sorrowful as if mourning the loss of a parent. A surrender meant an end to the war. The remaining Zhongbo garrison troops no longer needed to advance. Although Chudu had been breached, the 13 cities of Jueshi behind it, the painstaking product of the pragmatist faction over almost a decade, and the last remaining granary of the Zhou Empire could remain unharmed. Kong Qiu understood. This was the last wise choice Xue Shouzhuo could make. They had been completely wiped out in this game with Zhongbo. As soon as Xue Shouzhuo received them into the city, their great Zhou would cease to exist. Kong Qiu clung to the battlement, his knees buckling and his aged face awash in tears. The throne is usurped today, all thanks to our incompetence. He looked up at the tufts of snow dancing in the sky, mixing with the official proclamations of war. Gradually, he set his mouth in a resolute line. Shen Zichuan was instantly struck with the sense of foreboding. As was I. 'Cause what do you mean? The gloomy canopy of clouds shrouded the moon from view. Raindrops tumbled and splashed. Sure enough, Kong Qiu held his head high and bellowed. I am a subject of great Zhou. I will not kneel to a second master. With that, his official's robe fluttering, he made to leap off the city wall to die for his nation. Fuck, Fei Sheng inwardly cursed. Xue Shouzhuo might have surrendered to their new sovereign, but he had yet to hand over the imperial jade seal. If news of Kong Chou's leap were to spread tomorrow, the story would be twisted until it sounded like Shen Zichuan had forced him to his death. Oh, I see. It's more of like the image that they put out is so important, and the way rumors spread, yeah. Stop him, Fei Sheng shouted. Garrison troops had already made their way up the city wall, but the court officials were crowded around Kong Chou. No matter how fast the garrison troops were, they couldn't push through the crowd in time. All they saw was Kong Chou's official's robe billowing in the wind as he leaned over the battlement. Suddenly, a figure rushed up from behind and grabbed hold of Kong Chou's robe. "Grand Secretary, you mustn't," Liang Cuishan cried out. Kong Chou's figure lurched to a halt, scraping against the broken bricks of the city wall. Bracing himself on the ledge, he began to cough between wails. Liang Cuishan's back was clammy as he dragged Kong Chou away. He was so shaken that both his arms were trembling. The light from the flames in the dark of the night revealed his face, drenched in sweat. The ends of every street were clogged with the carriages of people trying to escape. The rich and noble had packed up their possessions, hoping to use the chaos to flee through the west gate, completely blocking the road. Li Jianting's carriage was knocked about on its way to the west gate. The guards in the driver's seat yanked on the reins and brandished their whips to chase away the commoners, bellowing, "Make way! Get out of the road!" More carriages tried to barge their way in, and sharp shouts of alarm rose. There were so many people it was like gruel in a pot, making it impossible for any carriage to advance toward the gate. The curtain of the carriage swayed. Li Jianting looked out at the towering palace and heard the toll of the bronze bell. The city has been breached. Han Jin ran barefoot through the streets. Oh, it's Han Jin, okay. He jumped and grabbed at the proclamations fluttering through the air and burst out laughing like a madman. The city is breached. Shui Shojua has surrendered, someone cried bitterly toward the sky. Our great Zhou has perished. Li Jianting felt an acute pain in her chest. She lifted the carriage curtain with trembling fingers. Her breathing became fast and urgent. She leaned forward and threw up onto the carriage floor. The wind snatched at her disheveled hair, and the drizzle masked her face. The knobs of her spine protruded from her heaving back. The last stretch of the journey Shui Shojua had spoken of was to suffer this humiliation on her behalf. Li Jianting's whole body was trembling. A chill penetrated deep into her bones, and she rasped a laugh. She and Shui Shojua had supported and enabled each other, but they had never shared anything like a warm teacher-pupil bond. Shui Shojua had no need for it, and neither did Li Jianting. Even in this moment, Shui Shojua was still carrying out his duty as a subject and nothing more. Jiang Qingshan hadn't returned. Even if Li Jianting fled to Jueshi, she would merely be struggling to live from breath to breath. Their Zhou Empire had perished. Not only did Shen Zichuan possess a powerful army, he had the people's trust. All the painstaking efforts they had made in the 8 cities would now be handed over on a silver platter to the usurper. Their unfinished business would become Shen Zichuan's badge of honor after tonight. How meaningless it would be, Li Jianting sighed, lifting her eyes and gazing into the rain, to drag out an ignoble existence, fleeing and hiding for the remainder of my life. Oh, the spine thing gives both fragility and imagery of a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. Interesting. I did not think of that. I'm worried what this means for Li Jianting. Well, she could be turning back to fight, or she could just be, like, giving up on life. And I don't know what she's gonna do right now, but, Li Jianting had spent half of her life hiding. She was destined to never see the light. But she had struggled with all her might. Victory or defeat was written in the stars. She had been defeated. That she conceded. The guard lost his grip on the reins as he watched Li Jianting leap out of the carriage. Letting the rain soak her, Li Jianting stopped to tie up her loose hair. Tens of thousands of her people were fleeing westward, but she alone headed east, the single fish swimming against the tide. No, I think you're right. She's going back. I just don't know how this is going to work. There's art, and I'm trying not to look at it. Han Jin waved a proclamation as he danced and sang merrily among the surge of bodies. He pranced joyfully up to Li Jianting and grinned. I'm looking for my brother. His brother who's dead? Flame blazed on the roof of Mingli Hall. Li Jianting bent and picked up a broken drum that had tumbled into the street. She beat it a few times, and a muffled thump rang out. Want to go to the palace? Han Jin clapped his hands. Yes, yes, yes. The ragged troops fought desperately around her, but Li Jianting no longer looked at anyone. She struck that broken drum and laughed with the madman, loud and unrestrained. As they marched in the direction of the palace, she raised her voice in song. An outcast subject once I was, a hero called when orders lost. So learned men I gather close, my cup poured full, the talents host. Before the backdrop of the lightless sky, Kong Cho and the other court officials wept atop the city hall. Oh, nomad flutes at Xiao Pass sound, where iron hooves chase frozen ground. The aging general spurs his horse, heavy armor all around. The stone monument in Li Bei had stood tall for a spring and an autumn, and a thin veil of snow blanketed Xiao Fengshu's saber. The armored cavalry galloped through the withered grass. Xiao Jiming dismounted his horse and wiped the snow from his blade. Ooh, we're getting like a... what do you call this? For some reason, medley scene came to mind. Like showing a bunch of people in different places doing the same thing at once. I don't know what she's singing. There is not a footnote. Where mountain snow makes stars of frost, the ruthless wolf slays greedy hawks. The roaring waves of the Chasha River churned onward, and the withered cheetah flower vanished beneath the current. Then back to sheaths and dust off sleeves, a respite washes clean the blade. The frail immortal roams with wine, with pine and moon in lonely glade. Niao Wenyu leaned over and coughed. Once again, his handkerchief came away, red with blood. He gazed out of the tent, but his vision was obstructed by the heavy fog. Chao Tianya's sword had already returned to its sheath. Through the fire and the rain, he looked at Feng Chuan. With merry feasts, the great hall fills, relishing their heady thrills. Li Jianting struck the broken drum as she threaded her way between vermilion walls. May we rejoice from lofty throne, drink and feast as our hearts lust. The fire in Mingli Hall roared toward the clouds, illuminating the sky as bright as day. A blazing sea of flames lay ahead. Han Jin ran forward with his arms raised, while Li Jianting turned back to take a final look at Chudu. Her fingers tapped lightly against the drum, but it no longer made any sound. She seemed to fall into a trance amid the conflagration as she continued hoarsely. Fall into passion, wine, and song. Let name and honor fade to dust. Is this the poem that the book is named after? Or is this a different poem? Does anybody know? Because again, there's no footnote, so I feel like it'd be weird for them to not include that, but unless maybe it's originally... it could be original by the author. That could be why there's no footnote. The lacquered pillars of Mingli Hall collapsed with a deafening crash. In the wake of the destruction came a wave of fire. The embers scattered over the hem of Li Jianting's skirt and burned along the patterns of embroidery. When she turned around, the raging fire swallowed her whole. That's the end of the chapter. That's the end of the stream today. I think she's dead, guys. Also, I'm sorry this went so long. There were a lot of moments for me to pause and say things, which is why an already long stream went even longer, but I didn't think it would take this long, so I'm so sorry. But now we get to look at the art. the art is just going to make me sad, but it's also very beautiful, and it's showing, like I said, the word I was thinking of, I don't know what it is, but I said medley scene. Like, it's showing all these different people in different places, and sort of like they're all thinking of or singing the same song at the same time. Which weirdly reminds me of something in a movie that is completely unlike this in every way. But there's this movie called Magnolia that I really like from the 90s. I think it's called Magnolia. And there's a scene where just sort of all of a sudden it's like a music video. All of a sudden, all these characters that are in different places start singing the same song, and it like pauses the movie just to like have them do a music video, basically, where they're all singing. And I love stuff like that, so that just absolutely like carried me into another dimension. So I love this little trope, whatever you call it. Yeah, Blue, I don't know if I should tell everyone when the extras start. I feel like I should wait until we get there, because I know, but I don't want to say anything. Oh, Henry, you said you don't want to check the poem because it's on the last page of the volume. We should save it for the moment of reading it together. Okay, valid. Oh, it was a rhetorical question. Okay. Yeah, so I will find out when we get to the extras. When we get there, it'll be a surprise. So yeah, I guess Li Jianting is dying in that fire. And I gotta go, but when we come back on Monday, we will be on page 261 for chapter 281, which is called The Wolf and the Eagle. I like the sound of that for our boy Xiaoqia. So yeah, thank you for a very epic stream. Thank you for coming today. Bye, everybody.